Hi, I'm Billy Hollis. I'm here at TechEd 2005, surrounded by 15,000 of the best software developers in the world. But I know something that apparently a lot of people don't know. There's a dark secret about this crowd here at TechEd among these software developers. Many of them, maybe as many as half of them, have a really serious problem. They're addicts. They're substance abusers. Now, I know this is hard to believe, but I want to try to explain to you how I found out about this insidious problem. For years, I've tried to talk to the developers that work on my team about the benefits of doing less code, about why it's wonderful to write as little code as possible so that you can have less maintenance, you can get your projects done faster. There are so many benefits. And the basic message that I've had to get down to at a very blunt level is just tell them, stop writing code. And that really doesn't make any sense to them because their typical response, and I bet lots of the folks here and the folks listening to this have the same response, is, how can I stop writing code? That's my job. No, it's not. You've made it your job, but that's not what your job is. Your job is to produce software, functional, complete software, hopefully with the absolute minimum amount of code. Okay, yeah, I know. You've got to write some code. That's a part of the process. But the reason people tend to want to make it their job is not because that's the best way to do things. And it turns out that the reason people don't want to embrace the message of less code is because of their addiction. It took me years to figure this out. When I tell them to write less code, I find out they just don't want to listen to it. They look at me and say, yes, Billy, and they go back to their desks and just keep on writing code. And now, after years, I figured out what the problem is. They're addicts. And that's the dirty secret of this business. At least half the people in it are addicts to code. All of you know code addicts. Many of you listening may be, in fact, code addicts. And so I'm not. I mean, you probably look at this wild hair and go, yeah, he's one of them. He's one of those code addicted guys. No, that's why I do writing. That's why I do architecture and design and things like that. I write code because it's a chore. It's the thing to get finished. But most of the people in this industry are not like me. And I can tell you the warning signs to spot the addicts. Here's something I've seen a lot of times. A developer will work very intensely on a piece of software. He'll really work at it just with this incredible focus, and he'll get finished, and he'll stand back from it, and he'll look at it. And then this shudder will kind of go through his body. And I know what he's thinking when he does that. He's thinking, oh, man, that was some good code. Now, folks, that's the behavior of an addict. If you're listening to me, and this experience strikes you as familiar, if you've ever done that, then it's time to confront this problem. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to do this right now. I want you to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I am a code addict. See, that's the first step. You've admitted the problem. It's a substance abuse problem. I mean, look at the indicators. Look, cokeheads. I mean, there's only one letter difference there. And what do they both do to get their fix? Well, they do a few lines, don't they? And you can also tell an addict, let me tell you the second warning sign. And I see this in the industry all the time. An addict will blow off activities that they know they should do in order to feed their addiction. Well, how many developers do you know you can't get them to do requirements? You can't get them to do specs. You can't get them to do architecture. You can't get them to do documentation. Why not? Because that does not feed their addiction. They got to get back to that desk, man. They got to write that code because they crave it. This explains a lot of things to me in this industry, things that I kind of didn't get. Test-driven development, for example, which is interesting, and I think it's nice, and it has a place in this industry. But I've talked to people about test-driven development, and they have an almost religious fervor about it. I talked to one guy, and he wrote this method that didn't return anything yet. and he wrote a test to make sure it didn't return anything. It was in a presentation. And I said, why are you doing that? He said, well, you know, I have to make sure it doesn't return anything. And I said, well, you're just going to throw that code away. And his answer was nonsensical, but I finally understood what the problem was. For him, test-driven development is just a way to write more code. That's all it is. Now, I have to admit that this addiction is probably not as bad as cocaine. It's actually maybe a little more like smoking when I think of it, because of the issue of code maintenance. You know, I don't generally have any opposition to smoking. As far as I'm concerned, smokers are just doing their part to contribute to solving the Social Security crisis, because, you know, after they die, there'll be more for the rest of us. But besides that, smoking doesn't really have any issues for me. Secondhand smoke, yeah, a little bit of an annoyance. But you know what? It goes away quickly. On the other hand, what do you code addicts leave behind? You guys leave reams and reams and reams of code. And in many cases, it never goes away. And who maintains it? Well, it's not you, is it? I mean, everybody agrees that maintenance is not something that somebody wants to do. So you push it off on other guys. You push it off on guys. You're so desperate that you'll push it off on guys who aren't even qualified to write code in the first place. Right? You don't let them write new code. They're not good enough. So you push them into maintaining code. Let me give you a moment to think about that. It's as if there's something wrong with the wiring in your house, and you ask somebody to come and fix it who's not qualified to install wiring. Now, does that make any sense to you? All right. So if you've spotted these issues and you know there's a problem, I've told you the first step, admitting the problem. The second step is you've got to start relying on a higher power. That's Bill Gates, okay? Because he's given you a gift to help you fight your code addiction. That's the .NET framework. You can do applications with way, way less code, and I mean way less than half the code that you're probably writing today if you use the framework intelligently. So I want to show an example of how you can use the power of .NET and Visual Studio to write a lot less code and do something fairly impressive. I work in smart client apps, and one of the things we need to do is to check to see if data has changed but hasn't been saved yet. That's typically called dirty checking. That typically results in a lot of code in every form that people write. I decided, because I'm a lazy developer, to solve that problem once and for all. So I wrote a component to do it, and I want to show you that component now. I have a form here. You can see it. It's just a typical form that's got some stuff on it. We'll imagine that it's a complete form for data stuff. And I want to do dirty checking. Well, I'm just going to drop a component on here that's called an extender provider. When I do that, a lot of my controls all of a sudden get a new property. And I'm going to show you that property now. Let me select all the controls that I want. Did I get this one? There we go. Notice this property right here, dirty checking enabled. The component I dragged over caused that property to appear. That's what an extender provider does. So I will set that to true for those components, for those controls, and I will write just a little bit of code. First, after I've loaded data in, I need to tell the dirty checker it's time to start dirty checking. Well, that's easy enough to do. me.dirtychecker1.start. Let's make that a full screen so you can see that a little bit more easily. All right? And then, once the dirty checker detects that there is a change in the dirty state, well, the dirty checker has an event. And that event is called dirty changed. I've got a button on the form that's for saving. And what I want to do is enable it if the data is dirty and disable it if it's not. So I'll just set the enable property to a dirty state that's passed in through the event arguments. That's all the code I need. Let's see this application in action right now. Press F5 and it starts up. Typically now, you would load some data into it. You might get the data to whatever you want to be here. And then press the start button. Notice that the save button is disabled. When I press the start button, any change I make will cause the save button to be enabled. But if I go back and reverse the change, it becomes disabled. Now, I can make as many changes as I want. And then I can reverse the changes in any order I wish. When I eventually back out all the changes, the button will go back to disabled because the data is now clean. There is an example of how you solve a problem that's very common without writing very much code. So those of you that know you're code addicts, I hope you'll use what I've told you to fight that addiction. And because once you've cured it, you'll be able to write better, more valuable systems. You'll be able to be more valuable to your organization. That means you'll make more money. And you'll also be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm not a codehead anymore.